training for a pharmaceutical company, but they don't make the pharmaceuticals. They make the systems the scientists use to create the pharmaceutical, at least the formulas, right? And I was showing them my tool, and one of the first things they asked is, does this require the install of anything on the computer? And I said, absolutely not. All you have to do is put these RDL files, and what I told them, put it wherever you run Management Studio from. And that's all, the only thing you need, but nothing gets installed. It's not only a tool for looking at things, but there's also a monitoring component to it. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But a little bit about me is, and that might be a little hard to read. So I do not have a degree in computer science. I actually had a degree in music education from quite a while ago. I've been at DBA for 22 years, but I also have that application development. I've done a lot of .NET application development as well, Windows and ASP.NET, as well as SSIS, SSRS, a little bit SSAS, not a whole lot, but some there. I've been teaching SQL Server for 26 years. I do teach SQL or the data Saturdays at Harper College. I've been teaching there for, must be maybe 13, 14 years now. I do have a class coming up on Azure SQL Database. So if you are interested in that, I think it starts in March and it goes for 9 weeks just on Monday nights. It starts at 6, goes about 2.5 hours on Monday nights. And the best part, no grade. Homework if you want to do it. You don't have to do it, but you want it, you can if you want. I was a Microsoft certified trainer for 25 years. And the funny part there is when I hit the 20th year anniversary, they sent me a jacket that said MCT right here, which was kind of cool, except it did fit. Then, like you said, at Harper College now, currently I am the manager of database engineering for a company called Exia Learning. We're part of the Cambium Learning Group. What we do is online reading programs for kids. So 100% of our customers are school districts from around the country. And so, of course, financially, that can hit us hard if school districts are struggling for funding. But it's actually a great company, a lot of really good people. Currently, we don't have an opening, but I'll tell you, if we ever do, one of the first people I'm going to call is Ross. And if he doesn't want it, then he can put it out to the groups. But right now, we do not have an opening. And then next thing is, this is 100% demo. It's the only session of probably 25 different sessions I do where I don't do a lot of stuff. It's 100% demo. So what I'm going to talk about, you go to daveblane.com, right on the main page, you'll see, right in the very first thing, you'll see reporting and monitoring. There's a little blurb for that. You can download the files from here. And all this is a bunch of RDL files. So wherever you put it, I would recommend you put it wherever you put Management Studio. And this is all it is right here. It's all these RDL files. So about 280, actually, there might be more than that. There's a lot of them. But it's just RDL files. And so, and the reason I like this is because, one, you kind of get around, a lot of companies are very picky about what you install, right? So if I install something in one of our computers, I got to run it all the way through IT and through a whole group of people before I can install it, right? So when I got there, I was showing them this, and they're like, does it require anything? I said, no, it's just RDL files. That's all it is. And so when we get to the point we're showing you, the file you want is this one right here. So when you go to open it, you want this underscore launching page. And here's why. When you open it, it detects the version of SQL you have. And then from that point forward, it'll enable and disable things based off of your version. You can also connect to an Azure SQL database on this. I will tell you, most of it is disabled when you do that, because a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here, you can't do in an Azure SQL database, right? So it will detect it. You can go to these other reports if you want, but it may or may not work, right? So that's the file you're going to want to look for ultimately. So once you download it, and I go into Management Studio, I'm going to right click on a server and you go to this reports, custom reports. When you click that, wherever you go, wherever you download and you put it, again, you're looking for this underscore launching page. I typically put it into where it says SQL Management Studio, then custom reports. That's usually where I put it. You don't have to. You put it anywhere you want, as long as you have access to it through Management Studio. Then I open this, and this pops up. And all it is it's telling me, hey, you're using something that's up, not Azure SQL Database. It's not SQL 2008 or R2. And there's a lot of things that will not work because the DMVs didn't work at that point because they didn't exist. Now with this is using almost 100% exclusively management views. So it's really not anything fancy. It's just an easy interface to get to stuff that as DBAs we would use, right? It's no secret on the code. In fact, every report, I have a button that says, see the code. So you can see the code on every single report that you see here. And then you can free and do whatever you want. In addition, you can add your own reports if you want to. And I have a report that shows you how to add a report. And I'll show you how to do it. I won't walk through it here and how to do it. It's step by step, and it'll show you how to do it. So why did I write this? A couple things. One is the monitoring portion of it. I wrote it because you guys heard me before. The company I was working for had 180 SQL servers. What are the odds of me getting at $2,000 to $3,000 per server to get funding to monitor them all with tools like Idera or Redgate? I'm not getting that funding. Simple. It's just not going to happen, right? When I was there, we had we were monitoring with SolarWinds 22 servers, 22 most important servers. But to me, that kind of sent a message that whoever used these other ones just weren't important enough to spend $2,000. I kind of disagreed with it, so I kind of came up with this. You can install all these monitor all these servers. All it does is use a database, SQL Server agent jobs, and extended events. That's all it does. All native SQL stuff. No extended store procedures, no .NET code embedded or anything like that. Just native SQL functionality. The other reason I wrote it is because we had just hired, you heard me saying before, is we hired somebody who never had a DBA. This is how I never had DBA experience. This is how we ended up in the bar at Summit. And I was showing this to somebody I can't remember where we were talking, but we were talking, I think, between sessions or something like that. And this guy was saying, he just hired this guy who'd never been a DBA before, and he's learning. I said, I got the tool for you. And you will see as we go through this, I think this is a really good learning tool because everything on here is on here for a reason. It's not because I was just saying, whatever. It was because either I needed it, it was something I was asked for, and I had to go and get it, or it was something that either I thought or somebody I read about thought it was important for DBAs to be able to get to. The other thing, have you ever been on a call as a DBA and you go, I got a script for that, but I don't remember where I put it.
Oh,
Right?
that's my life.
This basically takes the script library for a lot of DBAs and puts it in one spot, right? So you don't have to dig around for it. So when I click this right here, it runs, I think it runs about 28 queries, something like that. So it pops up this dashboard. And if you look, it already points out where my potential problems are. So you look, it says, well, I'm using Developer Edition. Well, if this is a production system, that's a problem. Not a problem for functionality, it's a problem for Microsoft.
It's a problem for you.
Well, it could be. Yeah. So this was when I was working at one of the companies, we found, and this is how we found it, is I connect this and I ran this. There was a part of our company in Chile. They were running Developer Edition as a production system. That day, we started a project to move them off that because you can't do that. You can't use Developer as a production system. So I got that. Then down here it says, oh, hey, I only have just a little over 3 gigs of memory left. right? And then down here it says, oh, page life expectancy is set to 5. Could probably be 50, right? And down here it says, oops, you're running out of drive space. So a lot of these things will tell you where your potential problems are, right? Not guaranteed that's where your problem is, but the key is potential. But if you look just on this main page, this will turn red if the number of temp DB files and the number of cores you have don't correspond with industry standards. Like if you have 25 temp DB files, it's going to turn red. And some of these, if you click on it, it takes you to a report where you can get more detail, right? So it's giving me the CPU utilization, page life expectancy, which is key memory counter, how much percentage of memory being used, but also down here, and this is from Knowledge.a, it's what are my top 15 weight types? And I do have his permission to use the code here. How many instances of SQL Server are currently installed on that box? Now, we found this because we had a server and I connect to it. I was like, where's the second instance coming from? We had no idea there was a second instance installed on that SQL Server. And of course, it wasn't being used by anything, but it was what it was doing. It was even if the service is just running, it's consuming a little memory, it's consuming a little bit of CPU, and of course, this space as well. So I can see that. But before I get to this other stuff, I want to click on this report. This is a disclaimer. The very first thing, please test in a development environment before running in production. Right? And if you look at the disclaimer, I say that 3 or 4 times in here. But then there's the bottom one. It's not my fault. I didn't do it, and I don't know what you're talking about. These are just over the years things that I've heard people say. And truly, especially that first part, because I really, really stress test it in development somewhere.
Production is where your best data is.
Yeah, but don't take my word for it. This has been used by a number of people. I've been using this for 5 years, constantly adding things. It has not been known that I know of to have caused a production issue or revealed something that was maybe confidential or anything like that, as far as I know. But there's 400 reports here. It's possible I might have missed something, but the key is that ultimately, if I put code in production as a DBA, if I put untested code in production and it crashes, it is my fault. Doesn't matter who wrote it. I'm not going to say, Jared, you wrote the code. It's your fault. I downloaded it off your website. It's not his fault. It's my fault. I've still put untested code in production, right?
That's right when I say, well, you failed my test.
Exactly. So, and then a lot of these, all the reports have this opportunity to get back to the main report. And this is the main report, was that one I just had. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see different settings, right? And they will change colors. Some of them will change colors based off of what it's looking for. Right here, like pending restart. There are certain SQL server level settings that in order for them to take effect requires a service restart, right? That will turn red if you have it. Number of encrypted databases, read-write latency. This is the highest, not your total, it's the highest. When you click on those, it'll take you a list of your databases, and then it'll tell you which databases have the highest read latency, which ones have the highest write latency. I will tell you most of the time it's the 10 TB.
So is this all read only?
But yes, except for when we get to the monitoring, that's a little bit different.
Okay.
It only writes into, it creates a database called admin monitor. It only writes to that database, right? Now, if you go and modify the jobs outside of this, that's a different thing. But for the most part, it's, with the exception of that, it is read only. Then it'll tell me, has any jobs failed in the last 24 hours? Have there been any job step retries in the last 24 hours? I'll tell you where that one came from. We had a backup fail once and it had 3 retries on the step and it led into the business day. And the users were complaining it was slow. Well, this is part of how we found it. I fired this up and that was the first thing that turned red. Well, I don't think that one turns red. But I saw, wait a second, none of these jobs are supposed to retry, right? Is it in a failover cluster? And if you click it, it gives you information about that. Is it in an always on cluster? If you click that, it'll give you information. How many nodes in the cluster? And look at this, missing backups. All that is are there any databases that have not had a backup in the last 24 hours? All in, a full backup. It doesn't look at transaction logs, just full backups, right? And then this one right here came up recently, and I ran into this before. If what's in sys servers and what is at server name are different. And how does that happen? If you rename the Windows box, you got to run some code in order for that to happen. And that's where that came from.
And why is that important?
We were having issues, I think, if I remember, it was connectivity issues.
Cerberus?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was issues with that. So that's an important point. If that turns they don't match, that will turn red. And you click it and it'll tell you what'll happen. Right. But then also over here, one of the things that it checks is you can install SQL Server, and it does it for some reason. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, it doesn't always install the performance counters. I've seen that a couple of times over the last 26 years, not very often, but it checks to see if they are installed. If they're not installed, it will tell you they're not installed. And then this particular report, because it's in Management Studio, you can simply right click and export to Excel or Word. This particular report works better going to Word, because you dump it out to Excel, it kind of moves these things around and really doesn't look. It kind of still does that in Word, but it's not as bad, right? And so this is the main thing. The other thing is right here, last restart. This will turn red, I think, if it's been more than 45 days, something like that. So again, when you pop this open, it will tell you where your potential problems are right off the bat. And the price is good, free. Doesn't cost a dime to get this. Although I have had people say, well, you should sell that. And I'm like, well, how do you sell XML-based files? Because that's what these are. So it'd be a licensing nightmare, because you could download it and give it to everybody you know, and there's nothing I can do about it. There's no way to stop you.
I wrote similar scripts on those information and put it on SQL Server Agent and sent it to the team,
Yeah.
every night.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah, so this, again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. But there's a second part of this, and that is the monitoring solution. So right here is the report library. So if I click this, it opens up the report library, and it goes through, and it actually will determine your version of SQL, and it will enable and disable these menu items. If you look, I have just a few reports here. All right, and on this particular thing, there's also broken up into sections. So like when there's a performance issue, these are typically things I want to know. All the reports are with an asterisk are typically reports I will run if I'm doing a performance assessment. So like if we got a new SQL Server, we bought a company, a SQL Server, those are all the reports I'm going to run. When I got to my current job, I ran all these reports just to kind of get an idea of the lay of the land, so to speak. And I was able to very quickly develop a list of things that, hey, these are some things that we got to look at, right? And so there's like, this is all database information, jobs, alerts, and operators. Here's some memory information, backups and restores. One of these reports, and I'll show it to you, we had a server in Brazil, and I ran this report right here, and I found out they were averaging 33 restores a month on a production server. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they go, we don't have a dev environment, so we use production as a development environment.
Same like
So,
the hospital I used to look at.
yeah, and you'll find that that's pretty common. I actually had that at the casino when I worked there for 9 years, going out in Belgium. That's how I crashed the casino floor. It was SQL 2000 on an old disk array. And I was, back then, really, if you had to cycle through rows, it was clustered. Or I'm sorry, not clustered, it was a cursor, right? And it spike the IO just enough to cause the casino floor to crash. So I crash everything on the casino floor. And I always say, top that. So then I have, this is general server information, but also security reports. So when I first got where I'm at now, we audit because we had an audit coming up for security. Our audits are a little different. We're privately held, so it's not SOX or anything like that. So I was able to run this and get the information really quickly from here. So that's that. So these are the various sections of it. And down at the bottom, there's a button here you can click and it gives you a report description, but also what is the corresponding RDL file that is associated with that menu item. But again, test before running in production. Then up here, you click this, these are all the steps you can add a report to this. So you can modify and customize it for your company and your servers, right? Even if it's not related to performance or just general server information or database information, you can put reports up here that pull business data. Say it's something you pull every month and you have to run that query, you create an RDL file, you can put it in here if you want. And that report right there, up in the right-hand corner, tells you exactly how to do it. Now up here, it tells you the server name and what is your current database. Because some of these are dependent on your database and what you connect to. And I'll talk about that here in a second. The one thing you cannot do with SSRS inside Management Studio is offer parameters. So you can't put something where you have a drop-down box where you can pick something, where you can pick the database, or you can't type in something. You can't do that in Management Studio with SSRS. I have a workaround for some of that, and I'll show you that. But you notice these right here are not active. And the reason they're not active is because the monitoring solution is not installed. And those, all they look for is a database called Admin Monitor. And it does have to be Admin Monitor, right? And the reason is all these databases, the connect streams depend on that database. And I tried to pick something that was probably less likely that somebody would have on their server, right? So to deploy it, and then there's help information about it. To deploy it, all you have to do is click right here. And it's just a series of SSRS reports. So it's giving me a warning that I'm about to do this. And it's telling me the server that I'm about to install it on. So I click yes. And then all I have to do is then click all these. And the reason I did it this way is because if there's a failure, you know exactly, a lot easier, exactly where the failure is. So I'm going to create the database. I'm going to go back to the deployment page. I'm going to create the tables. I'm going to go back to the deployment page. Then I'm going to create the store procedures. There's a bunch of store procedures it creates. Then I'm going to enter counter and wait information. What this is that the common SQL Server performance counters that we would need and for a performance issue, it inserts them all into a table, and the same thing for weights. It's just a common one. So if there's one not there and you want to edit, all you have to do is go to that table and edit. So it's a very customizable solution. Now this one right here, it will create some extended events sessions. So click the path in the config table. So create a config table. If you don't want it on this path, change it before you move forward. Okay? And that's kind of what I'm saying. So then I'm going to create the jobs. And then it gives me some blurbs about the job. Then down here, I'm going to create the extended event sessions. Click here, do one, and we get an error. Not sure what that is. And they're failing. Not sure why. So extended events, I'll show you on the other one. And then there's an extended event on deadlocks, one on blocking deleted logins, and deleted database users, as well as query timeouts. So we'll create all these extended events. It does work on extended event, or I'm sorry, on a named instance, although I really didn't write any of this with that in mind. Right? It's more, you might, so if you put it on a named instance, it's possible you might find something that doesn't work right. I don't think this is it, and I'm not going to troubleshoot it now, but there is something out there. So now we go back to the report library. You look, Now they're all active. Right, and we're gonna show you this on the other side. So I can't change instances, so I gotta close this, and I'm gonna disconnect from this. And then I'm gonna show you on this one, and I'm gonna connect to this AdventureWorks 2019. I have ran through all these reports with SQL 2025, and they all work. I haven't run into any issues yet. So if I go back to the report library, I can skip that main page. You notice they're all active right now. So all these reports are active. So again, it created the admin monitor database, it created the extended event sessions, and it created all the jobs. I think the default for most of these jobs, and I kind of grabbed this from, I can't remember what monitoring tool, it might have been the Redgate tool, I'm not sure, but they run every 10 seconds. You can change it. Just go to the job. You don't want to run it every 10 seconds, just go to the job, change the frequency, right? So, but I can come in now, I can see performance. So if I click, say, SQL Server Performance Counters, I right click on this, and it tells me all the performance counters that are in that table, right? And this is why there is a lack of the ability to put in parameters. I have to put parameters in such a way you got to click on it. So a lot of these, when you see these things, a lot of them are things that I kind of over the years, you know, I didn't, for the most part, I'm looking at performance issues I didn't care about 3 years ago. I didn't care about a year ago. Usually it's 45 days. Now this is configurable, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So let's say go with page life expectancy, and I want to see the last, let's go 14 days. It runs it, and it'll pop up a chart, and that chart will tell me exactly where it's been. And I don't have an index optimization job on this, my laptop. So it's kind of telling me where it is, but it also has the raw data. Right, so I can export this straight out to Excel. And the reason I put it this way is because the chart comes up right away. How many times have you been in a situation where you had to triage post-incident what happened? And you got to send that up the ladder, right? And what I found, and you may have found the same thing, the higher a person goes in that corporate ladder, the more they like charts.
Yes.
Right? So you don't have to create a chart. It's already here for you. Right? And then you click either right here or right here, and it'll take you right back to that page. Right? And you can also click this back button, and it'll give you back to the report that you were just at. Right? So I'm coming back over here, and I have the read-write latency report, SQL Server weights. It's a very similar setup. So I can choose what counter I'm looking for. It's a different table. And I can then select similar ranges as well. So then I come back over here. If I have any deadlocks, so you click here. I don't know if there are any, so I'm going to go to the last 30 days. And it looks like I had one deadlock on the 29th at 8:09 a.m. I'd like to say that wasn't me because I'm not usually up at that time, but it probably was since that's my laptop. So I can now use this if somebody says, well, it's deadlocks. And say, well, okay, well, the evidence shows I've only had one in the last 30 days, right? Not only that, it's right here, but here's the raw data too, right? So I can come back over here. And now, again, this 45 days is configurable. But if you look, I have a lot of different things that you can capture, but also there's two down here. Drop database users. And I think I had one here. Nope. And if you see a report like this, it means there's no data. I haven't figured out how to display there was no data yet. Plus, I also don't want to go to the 130, 40 reports that are there in Kagan. But there also is, where's it at? Drop logins. Here's my drop logins. Well, Fred apparently has been unemployed for a while, right? So, and this is important because if you ever had a situation where I used to have access, what happened to my access? Well, you can see right here, was the account dropped or not? Was the database user dropped or not? And this uses extended events to capture this information. You don't have extended events running, this won't work. So what it does is extended events just dumps it into another XML-based file. And the job just simply parses through that particular XML file, and then it dumps it into a SQL table. And that is what is used for this, right? So then I want to change that is there is a monitor configuration. So this is the current configuration. There is a config table that you can go and modify these things. There is a baseline on some of these reports. I'm still kind of working on that. Because one of the things I've always had as a DBA, I'm like, well, is that normal? Well, that's what the baseline is. But there is a minimum number. So in this case, for the baseline to work, one, it has to be constantly running. And two, you must have 300 captures in the last 30 days in order for the baseline to be calculated.
So we saw deleted users.
Yes.
What about users that have been added? More importantly, the access given to users.
So I currently do not have that, but actually that is a good idea. And I suspect, and Jared, you can chime in if you want, I would need to use extended events to do that.
Some of this stuff, even that you're grabbing right now, and so I'd have to check where that stuff in.
Mhm.
The default trace is still on all your SQL servers.
Mhm.
So certain things, for instance, there's a built-in report that shows like config changes.
Right.
It pulls from the default trace,
Mhm.
right? And I only learned that like probably a year or two before I joined Microsoft. I was like, what?
Right.
We've still got this stuff going?
Yeah.
Also so there might be certain things. It just depends. You'll have to check the default trace. For instance, something that might make this a little easier for you. Deadlocks are all in the system health event session.
Yes.
So I stopped creating an extended event on my servers for
Yeah.
deadlocks because I was like, oh, I'll just pull it right from here.
Yeah.
But those other ones, right? You definitely need that.
Yeah.
So maybe some of that stuff will be there for a short amount of time, right? So you got to pull it and retain it.
Yeah, and that's where the job goes.
Yeah.
So extended events, it creates a new file every time you restart the service. But it'll still capture those, but the job runs on a regular basis to capture those. But that is a good idea, Ross. I never thought about that, but that is a good idea. And to your point, Gerald, I kind of wrote this with in mind at some point, they might cut off that default
Yeah,
trace.
and that's fair.
It's kind of like the profiler.
Right.
You know, I've heard many, many years, oh, that's going away. And last I heard, it's still in 2025.
Yes, it is.
So you never know when it's going to happen. I kind of tried to write this with the event that at some point they might
Yeah.
get rid of that
Well, I'll
default.
tell you this, traces in general will never go away because they're not in the habit of spending the time to remove a feature.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that the default trace won't be inactive.
Right.
The profiler as a software
Mhm.
will probably eventually just be pulled out. The ability, though, to start a server-side trace, well, I'm guessing is not going to be removed because they're just not going to take the time to remove something
Right.
that isn't but the default.
Right.
They could turn it off pretty easily, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's still an option.
Yeah.
And just right now, none of this is written with it that,
This is what profiler,
yeah.
you notice the features of profiler versus extended events.
Oh, they haven't added any events to Profiler for years.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They won't.
So
So,
that,
but one of the things, so if you look, you can change baseline color. So right now it's green. So if I click this button, I can change it to red. And now back to the configuration page. And sure enough, now it's red. Right, so it just made an update into the admin monitor database. This is something I think is important. Remember, those jobs are running every 10 seconds. And it created like 10 or 12 jobs. Based on your job history retention, you could overwrite the history of critical business jobs if you're not careful. So you can change this if you want. So you have 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. I asked the question, are you sure you want to do this? 5 days, I wouldn't do that. 6 days, I would never do that.
Yeah.
Because you could lose, again, critical job history for your business and other admin jobs. Right? So there's a job that goes in every day and it just deletes anything over whatever this is. So right now, it's just 2 days. You can use Transact SQL, and you see it right there. Just simply copy that out, and you cannot copy and paste anything in these reports. If you the code, if you want to copy and paste, you got to right click and export to, I export to Word. If I want to copy the code, if I want to save the data, I export it to Excel. They export very nicely into Excel. So now I go back to the monitoring configuration, but again, you have to be careful with this. The data growth, it runs, I can't remember what the default is. I think it might be once a day, maybe once a month. I honestly can't remember. But I keep 35 days, 365 days of this, because I want to see the growth over an extended period of time, right? Especially if I'm going to get new hardware, I want to see, well, where's this database on current activity? Where's the database going to be a year from now, right? Based on current activity. You can change that if you want, just use T-SQL to do it. The other thing right here is the days retention, right? How much do you want to keep of all this data? You only want 45 days? You want 30 days, 90 days? All those that, whereas you like the performance counters, you saw the last one on the right was 45 days. You change this, it'll automatically update all of those. So if you change this to 90 days, now you'll be able to see 90 days on those report options, right? It'll automatically happen.
After another 45 days, of course.
Well, yeah, you got. So that's the monitoring tool. I like it, but I wrote it, so I'm a little biased. But what I like about it is I think you can get, what I think is pretty effective monitoring and reporting at no cost. I have not seen this cause any issues at all in performance. But what I like about it, no agent is installed. And that's not a knock on Redgate. And I'm not trying to compete against Redgate or any of these other tools with this. Why? They have an entire teams of people developing their products. This is me between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. My dog yelling at me that I should not be sitting on the couch. Or he thinks I should be, right? So again, I'm not trying to compete with this. The main target of this was those lower level servers that maybe you couldn't get the funding for. Right. And so I think it's a really good thing, but again,
No, it is good.
Yeah.
so now let's go through some of these reports. So the first thing is current state reports. These are all things that I would look at if I get a report of a performance issue or an issue on a server. Because one of the things that I found is, so we had a situation, and this was our setup, is when there were an issue with the server, pages went out to everybody. They went to networking, security, development, DBAs, everybody, right? And then once everybody got on the call, we did some initial triage, and we'd be like, okay, well, security, we don't need you. And then we drop people off, right? Well, we were measured on average system downtime to the minute. And then I would sit there and listen. The DBA, oh, I need to get this information. Give me 10 minutes. And they go and they find their code in the script library that they lost and don't know where it is. And then they run it and they finally got the data. Oh, I want that in a chart. Oh, now I got to create a chart, right? So the idea of these specifically was to reduce the DBA's role in that outage. Try to get the data that we're being asked as quick as possible. So as you see, there's a lot of different things in here. So currently executed job, checkpoints last 30 seconds. So page life expectancy last 30 seconds. So some of these reports, the report will open up and then it does a check every 5 seconds or whatever. It's like just cycles through, it just gets into a loop, right? And then it'll pop up with a chart that'll say, so now it's going to run. So in 30 seconds, it'll pop up, has a chart and raw data, so you can really see. And more importantly, if you need that data for post-triage, post-incident triage, you can just simply right-click and save it, right? And that's really part of this as well, is to be able to put you in a position to save this data easily so that you can use it in a post-event meeting, which should happen on a regular basis. And there it is. We see the page life expectancy going up. The fact that it started at 80 is kind of a problem, but it kind of is what it is. So there's the chart, and here is the raw data. Now the reports,
Normally I'd record it.
you see this blue bar at the bottom? It gives you a timestamp of who ran it and when they ran it, right? Because that could be important in certain types of reporting that you're looking for, right? Oh, when did I run it? Oh, I ran it. I think I ran it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not really sure. Well, this report at the bottom will tell you. And also, the reports, there's a lot of data getting returned, but you're at the end of the report when you see this blue bar at the bottom, right? So now I have a couple different options because these performance counters are dependent on the restart. I also include when those servers last restarted. Right? So I can go back to the main report, or I can go back to the report library, or I can simply click this and it takes me back there. So that's what all these things are doing. But also I can look at database IO stalls. I can look at what is the current CPU utilization. So I run those. This actually was important in the current situation I'm having, although the green line on there is kind of hard to find, is we use a tool called Spotlight, which is a great tool, right?
Yeah, we got it.
Except for what it does when it comes to CPU utilization, it just tells me what is the CPU utilization, right?
Mhm.
I ran that report, this report, and I was like, wait a second. That CPU is high, not because of a SQL problem. There's something else out there that was caused the CPU to spike. Another situation we had an outage or an issue of performance. I ran this report and the CPU utilization was like 15%. But then there was something else out there that was at 60%. We found out somebody installed an application in a database. And that's what was causing the CPU spike. So now I can at least tell what it is, right?
Spotlight doesn't separate SQL process from CPU.
It might, but I haven't found it yet. And then, of course, here's the raw data. It's telling me what it is. But I can also, and this is true for all the reports, I click here to see the query. There's the query. And a few, not a lot, but some of these reports I got from people and I put the appropriate credit in there. If you find that you wrote some of this code that I'm using, let me know and I will be more than happy to give you credit. But most of it really came from the Microsoft documentation. I would say 80 to 90% came from Microsoft documentation, which honestly speaks volumes to the quality of the SQL Server Microsoft documentation out there. The Books Online thing from years ago, wasn't really the greatest, but
Yeah,
now it's actually really good.
that helps when we can use GitHub to directly update
Yeah.
after approving changes.
Yeah, so this has been a very important report because when somebody starts saying, well, it's a SQL problem. Okay, well, tell me about this that makes you think it's a SQL problem, right? Because one of the things that I find, you end up in what I call the triangle of death. And at the points of the triangle, you have the DBAs, you have the application development team, and then you have infrastructure networking team. And what do? They all blame each other, right? And me, as the manager of the DBAs, I'm like, okay, if it's a DBA problem or not, we need to show evidence that it is or is not. If you don't have the evidence, do not say, well, it's a network problem or it's an application problem. If you say that, you better be ready to give evidence because I'm going to ask for it. Forget about the other folks. As the manager, I'm going to ask for it.
Guilty until proven innocent in the database.
Right.
Maybe it should be.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with it.
Right.
It's just what it does do, it creates gridlock. When you have an outage or a system problem, it creates this gridlock, right? And so what we want to do is we want to use these reports to drive the team in the right direction. Let the evidence drive your work, right? And so that's what this has given us. So I can also look at view current processes, total versus target memory. What is using the TempDB with code? So I click on this. Nothing's using TempDB. What do you see over here? The actual query that's using TempDB. So you can see that as well. But then also I can come over here. Why is the log not clearing? Right? So in here I'm not doing backups on the admin. The model, I don't care about that. Report server, log backup. The rest of them I think are all in simple recovery. So that's why it's saying nothing, right? This, if you have replication, always on, I don't know if mirroring, but I think mirroring does the same thing. If that second node is down, your log will fill up, right? So if you have an issue, you can now go in here and say, well, it's not replication, or it's not always on, it's, everything seems to be working right. Again, you can see the query.
I like the fact you have lazy writes in the, because so many times I'll see people, oh, my page life expectancy is great.
And
It's not a memory problem. And I'm like, did you look at lazy writes?
yeah,
No.
so
Oh, let's look. Oh, look, it's a memory problem.
yeah. So if you look on my blog, there on the left-hand side, there's a presentation materials. I think I've done it here. I have a presentation on memory, how to troubleshoot memory issues. And during that session, one of the things I talked about is that would you ever buy a car simply by just looking at the front end? No, you're going to walk around the car, you're going to sit in the front seat, you can move the seat, you can sit in the passenger seat. And if you care about anybody that rides with you, you might sit in the back seat, see if it's comfortable. You're going to open the trunk, you're going to open many different angles. SQL Server memory is no different. You got to look at multiple counters. There are times where a single counter will say, well, that's, and usually it's page life expectancy
Yeah.
that people put out. Is that, oh, that's low, it's got to be a memory problem. Not necessarily, right? So if you want more information on that, you can go into my blog and there's a presentation on that. So these are some common things that I look at. So another thing is current processes. If you've got a performance problem, that's one of the first things I want to look at. I click here and it's going to tell me, first thing it does, do I have any blocked processes? If I do, I don't click here, I still click here. And it's telling me, oh, hey, there's my blocked process. It's telling me the lead blocker. So if you're in a production system, this would be really big. You click this lead blocker and you sort it twice, there's my lead blocker. Right? It's telling me the SPID that's blocking and it's blocking itself, but it's also blocking 59. Right? So you can sort by the SPID that's blocking, sort it here. And then SPIDs with the lines. You ever do DBCC input buffer and you run it and no code is there? So I've kind of taken those out. If there's no link on that SPID number, that means it couldn't find the code for it. But if I click on SPID 56, here's the code that's causing the problem. Right? Now I can decide and start to look at, well, what are the consequences of me stopping this? But more importantly, it can also help me guide me, who do I need to talk to? Right? Because I can look at that application, that code and say, oh, this is this application, I need to get those folks involved. Because before I stop that SPID, I want to know what are the consequences. Right? What's going to happen? It might create a ton of work for you if you do it without the proper process, right? So you got to be careful there. So it gives me the code, but also if there's any other SPID out there, I can just look and see, well, what's being blocked? Well, that's what's being blocked. Just reading and never do a select asterisk, and I'll show you how you can find that. I actually have a report that will return the code of all stored procedures that have select asterisk in it. Right? And I have that for a reason, because that's not, in my opinion, many times that's not the best way to do code. Right? And so now I can see all these SPIDs that are out there. I can see the wait time, but I can also see where's it coming from. I can see what application they're using. I can see the CPU, physical IO, memory usage, when it started, last batch, is it an open transaction? True, what's the status? The domain, the user, login name. So I can know exactly who to call. So, and this actually came up. We had a situation where we had blocking because the end users, if the report didn't return in like 2 milliseconds, they click the report again. And then again, and all of a sudden now we have all these people running the report because they didn't want to wait. So we had somebody block it. It crashed the system that was responsible for $1.5 billion in debt. So we called that user, and of course we get the standard, well, I'm not doing anything. Well, wait a second. And so we terminated that process because it's just reporting. Then another block popped up because they were all backlogged, right? We called that person. And we did this for a reason. Because what are they going to do? They're going to go tell all their friends, oh man, those IT people, I caused a problem and they called me in. Right? So, and this is something I've always told my students. Even as experienced DBAs, if you don't have that just little short hesitation before you run a stretch, you're probably not doing it right. Even after 26 years, I still have that thing, did I get everything right? Right? Am I going to cause a problem here? I still have that little fraction of a time for hesitation. So it does happen. So I can now, I know exactly who did it, what application you're using, who do I need to call to see if it's okay for me to terminate that process, right? So what'll happen is, and I don't know why this white box just started appearing, but this box right here, the one with the, right here is the red line, that's your lead blocker. The one that has the fonts that look like this are the ones being blocked, right? So it gives me all this information. So now I can, again, move forward. So then I can go back to the report library by clicking this. So then down here, here's my memory reports. So when I got a couple different things, there's one is buffer pool usage. One of the things I like to know is if I'm running short of memory, which database is consuming the most part of the buffer pool. I will tell you, the bigger your database is, the more active your systems are, this might take a little while. That's why I have this warning up here, right? So it says, are you sure you want to do this? And the client's answer is yes, and it's telling me the admin monitor is currently using, there's 397 pages, and it's using 3 megs of the buffer pool, right? So at least I know which system is using the most of the buffer pool. So I come back here, and then I can look at spills into TempDB. Obviously, that can be a sign of memory pressure. One of the things you want to look at. I can look for memory dump files. So Microsoft, if SQL Server has an issue and it causes a memory dump, it will create a file that tells you when it was created. If there's no memory dump file, there was no memory dump in SQL, right? So we had a situation, we actually created a ticket with Microsoft because we were having our primary node of our cluster just crash. And then it would fail over. And people are like, oh, it's a memory dump, it's memory dump, memory dump. I'm like, no, it's not, because I don't have a memory dump file. So we created the ticket, and the guy said, well, it's not a SQL problem because no memory dump file was created, right? And so that's an important thing. So now I can look at this, because one of the things that created ticket with Microsoft, one of the things they're going to ask for is these dump files, right? So I want to be able to easily get this. So it tells me where it's at. So then I can come back down here, and I want to see my memory settings and counters. So it's telling me I'm using 69.59% of the memory, and there's my settings there, and this down here, how much of the ad hoc queries in the query, in the cache, how many queries has it determined to be ad hoc queries versus stored procedures? So why have I seen this as important? I would have a transactional system where it should be using stored procedures, and I would see 87% of the queries are ad hoc. Something's not right. If that was a data warehouse, I would expect it to be really high, but not a transactional system. I expect that to use stored procedures.
Ha,
But, oh, yeah.
I'd love it if that were true. Not with
Yeah.
ORMs, though.
Unfortunately, I see this a lot of times much higher than what I think it should be. Okay. And so you can see your memory settings, and there's a few other things. You can see memory grants pending. You can see connection count. Every connection consumes memory. Not a lot, but a little bit. It says I got currently 13 connections, and it's using 2.3 megs of memory. Not significant at all. And this was one of the things that just, well, if I ever need to explain memory, I want to be able to explain it all, right? And this is something that I came up with, again, not usually a source of problems. So that is about memory. So this is performance or backups, restores, and high availability VR solutions. So obviously you can get information about availability groups. Here's information about backups. This one here is a backup speed rate. So in this case, I did a backup of a database, ran 0 minutes, but also you can tell megabytes per second, but what if it was compressed? Okay, so it gives me this information. And Jim Evans down here, that's my old boss. So this is actually, I've used this a lot to see is, do we get a benefit by compressing it all? And the default is compressed if you have that configured at the server level. But it also tells me the backup size, if it's compressed. I have a problem here, and that is this is megs and this is K. They both need the megs. And when it finished, right? So this is one of the reports I run if backups appear to be slower. Right? I'll run this report. But then also I can look at backup progress. So if you're currently seeing backups and you click this, it'll give you the session ID, how much is complete, when it started, and the estimated time when it's completed. Same report, but also for restores. Unfortunately, I don't have any databases that will take more than like 2 seconds to restore, so it's a little hard to demo this one here. So then also down at the bottom, any mirrored information, log shipping. Here's the restore progress. Here is restore information. Let's see, I restored on 9/5. I restored the Adventure Works 2019. It's currently online. It's currently on the server, but it also tells me which backup I used and what was the source database on that server where it came from, right? And so if it turns red, if it's not on the server anymore, but now I can see all the restores that were done. And almost every column has this options to sort by that column. It's just this little button right there. So this is how I found the folks in Chile restoring 33 times a month. Ran this report and I expected nothing. And what I get? Whew, a lot of them, right? So there's that. But then also backup information for log and full differentials for a particular database. So in this case, here's for in the last 7 days. So I just did this full backup and it gave me the information, but I can also do it for a specific database. Full differential information for a database in the last 45 days. So I click this and it gives me a database. I click it and it gives me all the backups I did on that database, right? Why is that important? Because sometimes if you have a lot of databases on a server, when you run this report right here, last 45 days, it could return a lot. The most databases I've ever seen on a server was 518, which is actually quite a bit. It was for routing software for trucks. Every region that they had created new database. Right, so they had 519 regions, so 519 databases. So I found that sometimes if you got a lot of databases, that report took a little longer. It's a little difficult to find what you're looking for. That's why I came up with this. So that's the backup information. Also information about clustering, log shipping, mirroring, so you can also get information about those as well. Which brings us to jobs alerts. We'll come back to this one. So there's the expected information, alerts, deleted jobs. Actually, no, what this is jobs that have the auto delete configuration set, right? Which means when that job runs, it'll delete itself. And why is that important? Because let me play out this scenario for you. So I'm unhappy with my job. I'm going to create a job that's going to delete all my databases, all my data, and I'm going to call it backup. Right? Won't raise any suspicion with that. I'm going to schedule it to run 60 days from now. It's going to run, delete all the data, delete itself. But right after I create that job, I'm going to resign. 60 days from now, they're never going to look at me. And the evidence that I did it is gone. Because if they have logging of data deletions, who does it think did it? The SQL Server agent. They will never know that I did it. So we actually had an alert that checked all of our jobs every day, looking for this. If it found it, we got to move.
I didn't even know that there was an auto delete option.
Really? I don't know why it's there. It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Never seen that, didn't even know. Maybe I never had a reason to look.
Yeah.
So like,
It's kind of
Interesting.
scary. And so you have that. So this right here will tell me if there's any currently executing jobs. Of course, right now there's not. So in performance, it's also over here, currently executing jobs, right? But I also can look at job failure rate. And this right here, it'll tell me the job, but also tell me It ran 32 times, it failed 32% time, and it's failing at a 100% failure rate. Where this came from is that I called the vendor and said, hey, your job's failing. Well, they go, well, it fails every now and then. Like, okay, it's failing 46% of the time. Oh, that's a problem. And helped establish priority with that vendor, right? And so it can be also used to help drive your work. Whenever you see something like this, where there is a link, that will show you the history. So if I click here, I want to go to right here. Here's my job history for that particular job. Right, and you can sort it by run status or retry attempts. You can do that. So then the next thing is that job failures past 30 days. Here's job history. I can click the report and it will tell me last executed, next run date, is the job enabled or not. So if I click here, and again, I can choose what is the execution duration for the deadlock job. I want to see it in the last 180 days. And there's my history of it. It's telling me how long it took. Obviously, it's not a daily job because I got some gaps in there. Why is it inconsistent? Well, because I go to bed and I close my computer and the service stops, right? So this is something that I also have found very important to have a chart on job histories, right? So I click the back button and I go back to here. So this is job information. This just simply gives me information about the job, and it tells me if it's enabled, no, who the owner is, because this is important. If this is an Active Directory account and that account is no longer an Active Directory, it'll fail right away. Because the first thing it does, it goes into Active Directory, not to see if the account is enabled, just to see if it exists. If it doesn't exist, the job will fail, right? Tell me when it was last executed. So it just gives me some basic information about the job itself. But I can go to the job, let's say this job right here, and it gives me job name, step ID, and the code in that step. So it gives me all the code for the individual steps, but also step type. And I see right there, I got a little bit of a problem because I need to sort it by this. And the reason is that if you have Transact SQL, if you have maybe a job step that execute SSIS or it's a PowerShell, I might want to sort it by the top type of job steps, right? So it gives me all that information. Then another thing is job step information, job retries in the past 24 hours. This is something I just added, job executing at a specific time. Remember, I can't put us in there to put parameters in there, but what I can do is give you basically an opportunity to pick it. So like the other day, we had a problem we knew exactly 7:30 p.m. We knew when the problem was. So I clicked, so right here at this time, I click this and say, okay, well, what jobs are running at 12:30 a.m. on 2/8? Here's all the jobs that were running. And it not what started, we're actually running at that time, right? So if it started before and ended after, that job would get returned, right? And it'll tell me run minutes and run seconds. So it'll tell me how long it took. So that has been very, very useful for us.
Yeah.
And I just put this out there. In fact, this came up, we had a problem on last Friday night, our fit cluster or database mirroring failed over unexpectedly at 7:30 p.m. I ran this job and my Spotlight doesn't give you that. So my boss goes, well, that's a great view. And I go, of course it is. I wrote it. Right? This is very essential. So now you can look at it by the minute, what jobs are running at the time. Right? But then also you can jobs running average longer than average. So I can go, so I want to go see all the jobs that were running 20% longer than the average. This job right here. And on this day right here, it took longer than average. So this is the average run is 137 seconds. For some reason, that particular time, it took this long. This is the average that we're trying to, so this, I picked 20 seconds, so it calculates the average duration, and then it adds 20% of that. It says, okay, this is what you got to be at below in order to not get returned. If it is above this, it'll get returned in this report. And this number will change based off of whatever option you pick here. Right? This has been very, very useful to me because I want to see, is there any commonality when it runs 30% longer than normal? Is that because it's a problem that runs a specific time? Right? So I want to see that kind of information. This has been very, very useful for us. And this is just some information. Here's my SQL Server agent properties. In this case, the job history is not set, so no retention set, so it's the default. So I haven't, that'll be a problem, so I need to look at that. Now, server information, again, this is very, very important. It's just information about the server. For example, I can go connection IP addresses. What computers are based off of IP address are currently connected to this box. Right, so I can go and I can gather this information. Right, total reads, total writes for that particular session. But I can also go and look at custom error information, data collection, the error files, extended event information, general server information, OS power settings. Right, this can be a problem if you're not set right. Right, the default is it should be the high performance, yeah. All right, thank you.
It's like, so change it to be or they didn't hold down.
Yeah.
It's like simple.
Yeah.
It's like the regular.
So,
Thank
and
you
then
so much. That was, yeah.
Thank you.
it's really-
my email address is on my blog, so if you send me an email. And
I will.
All right,
Thank you so
all right, thank you. So for example, here's my service account information. So here's my accounts here. Is it running or not? What is the configuration the last time it started? What account is it running? So these are all things I do, especially when I do an assessment on a server. Trace flags enabled at startup. The 3226. I don't know what that is. I just kind of picked one and set it so I can have something to show up on this report. And so also trace flags that are currently running. The one that's configured for startup, right? So there might be something out there that you're not aware of. So that's just some general information about the SQL Server. Then down here is a bunch of information about security. This is the one probably that I like the most, and that is, where we go? SA audit and password review. So it looks, the second chart below, it tells you information about SA account. Was it renamed? I like how people think renaming it's actually security. I don't think it is because the security identifier in the back end is still the same, right? But this also tells me any accounts that have a potential problem with the password. And you notice I don't put it here, I put type 1, type 2. And the reason I put that in here is because I don't want people be printing this out and say, well, this account has this problem. But if you click right here, type 1 is passwords that match the account name. Type 2 is the does not have a password. Right. So this report gives me that information right off the bat. Right. Makes it really easy to identify what accounts had problems and could be a security gap for me. Then also down here, it's accounts deleted, login information, password last change, procedures with execute as on it. So it'll use this database that's up here. So when I click this, it goes through all the procedures and it says, well, these guys right here have execute as in. And you can click right here, and here's the definition of all the stored procedures. So now I can see that code. So that's the security side of things. I find it very, very useful. This is something that I wrote because, where's it at? Schema owners with object names. We had to do some cleanup, and when I go to delete the database user, it won't let me because they own the schema. Well, before I delete that schema, I need to know how many objects are in that schema, right? And so I would go run this report, and if there's 150 objects in that schema, I got a project I need to do before I can finish this, right? And that's not something you can just simply move to another schema. If an application is using it in that schema, your application more likely will fail, right? So that has also been very, very useful. which brings us to this database information. This column right here returns any information for the most part related to databases. If you see a D here, that means it's specific to this database right here. Right, so if I'm going down, this is something that I use a lot, CheckDB status. It looks at all my databases and says, oh, I got a problem. I'm not running CheckDB. Right, so for these, for the most part, have never been done. So that's a very important for that I run. Another one I run quite often is so you can get information on file groups, files, is like database functions. So I can look at this and say, well, let's look at this. And you can get the code of that function. So Ross, all these where you can get the codes, I've added that all since Summit.
Huh?
And so I can gather that information really quickly. But also I can go in and get mass column, and it tells me what mass it's currently using. Right? I can look at database state, all databases, what databases are currently using the version store, which is in TempDB. Where's the one I'm looking for? Database file size and space used. So you click this, it goes through all the files and tells me the database, the file name, what type it is, the size, space used, and space used %. But then I also got this little graphic over here. One is the size, the other is space, how much is it using. They tend to touch right around 80%. The closer they are, the fuller the file is. Right? So is that important? That depends on the database.
Yeah.
Right? So, but now I can very easily identify which files not only are about to fill up, but what this can really tell me, which files are about to go through an auto growth. Right?
So that's my next question,
Right.
because I can only, this thing has everything. But I didn't see the one thing that I always want to see,
What's that?
file growth and what caused it.
Oh, you will see it now.
Okay.
I don't have it yet, but
I can share my extended event in the script that
Yeah,
I
could
used to
you?
parse it
could you?
with
Yeah,
you. Yeah, because I used to do that because, I'd be like, you grew TempDB and blew it up.
yeah, and so that is, I just hadn't quite figured out how to put it in there yet,
Okay,
but that is something that I want to
this
look
thing
for.
is so cool.
And then, so we have, what else? So index fragmentation, if it's a big database, it might take a while. So this warning pops up, I click this, and it will return anything that has 20% fragmentation or higher. The far right column will turn yellow, red, or green, depending on where it's at. And you can sort it by percentage, and you can identify where's my index fragmentation at. Another one that I have used a lot is this. This is just general index information, doesn't return anything about fragmentation or anything like that. But then this one right here, index to column ratio by table. So we look at the number of columns and number of indexes. So if I look at this, 6 columns, 5 indexes, that seems a little excessive to me. I would need to investigate, why is that? Is it because we really need it, or is it because a developer just kind of threw it out there thinking they need it? Right, which we have seen quite a bit. Another one that's out here is index fragmentation or index usage. So it'll tell you how much an index is being used. And it's these 3 columns right here. User seek scans and lookups. And how many updates have happened and when the last time a seek and a scan has been done on that particular table or that index. We go back over here. And then we go to indexes that are unused. This can be very important. And really what it is just simply indexes that have these 3 columns at 0. Right? If you have an index, whether it's used or not, when you do an update, still got to update it. When you do index optimization, it still needs to optimize it and defrag it. So I want to eliminate as many duplicate indexes as possible. I'm sorry, ones that are not being used. So I'm gonna investigate this and find out, do I really need these indexes?
Investigate, he
Yeah.
said. That's real important, because I got a horror story I'll tell after this.
So then I also have, there's indexes that, where'd it go? It's a duplicate index in here somewhere. Where'd I put it? Indexes that are unused.
It's up, I saw it.
What?
It's up. Duplicate index.
Oh, here we go. I wanted to fix that, but I ran out of time the other day. So duplicate indexes, and really what it's looking for is, in this case, same table, exactly the same index. However, if two indexes start with the same column, it will be flagged in this report as duplicate, because you may not necessarily need them, right? So again, follow up, investigate, troubleshoot it, talk to the right people, making sure, because if you have a composite index and you don't reference that first column, it's not going to use it, right? So index is very important, and so it'll flag those. Another thing that I like to look at for is like objects with schema binding, non-searchable searches and store procedures. So it'll tell me that, okay, so that store procedure, it has a possible where function or a possible function in the where clause. So I come back over here, modify date. I thought I had the code in here, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I hadn't uploaded it yet. I do have the code, so I'll update it when I get home. I must have wrote it late last night. So that's important to know, because that might be a problem, but more than likely it probably will not be, but it's worthy of investigating.
Well, if you have a function in a where clause, what index is it gonna use? None.
None, yeah.
Can't seek it, don't use it.
So objects and
It's gonna
schema
scan it
binding.
anyway, it might not.
This one right here, orphan database users. So these are database users that don't have a corresponding SID. This can be an audit problem. It's not a problem from a performance perspective. It's an audit problem. So you want to clean those out whenever possible. Then you have, where we at? We're down here. Our plan guides. I don't like these. This one has a plan guide, but it's also, there's the code. So basically, this is the way, this query store has similar functionality. I can use plan guides
Force
to
plan.
force that query to
Yeah.
always use this plan. Right?
But a plan guide, I mean, you can literally edit it and make it do whatever you
Whatever.
want,
Yeah,
whereas force plan is going to use something that was already generated.
yeah. And the thing about those, the fundamental idea is good. But just like everything else, it requires good DBA research and sound investigation to see if it's something that's worthy of using.
And my personal philosophy is, if you need to force the plan, you also need to rewrite your query.
Yeah, I think that too.
Or
Or you're not
look at your,
optimizing.
or look at your architecture.
Yeah,
It's great for a short-term fix, but should review which queries am I forcing? Because they need to be rewritten.
right, right. And so you can do that. This one right here will go into your plan cache, and I don't have any right now. But basically what it does, it looks like for any plans in the plan cache that had implicit converts.
Hmm.
Why? Because that can be a contributor to performance problems, right? And then you have, where's the next one? Queries of high logical reads. So I click on this, and there's the code, and it tells me I can sort this by execution count. Looks like they're all ones, so they all ran once. You won't see that in a production system. What the logical reads, average logical reads per execution, right? So it gives you some good information there. Totally elapsed time in seconds, the last time it was executed. So it's just basically, what are you doing from a read standpoint? But then also we have information about statistics, like the indexes. It might take a little while to run on a larger thing. This is going to tell me what statistics I have out there and when the last time they were updated. Okay. When you optimize your indexes, it should update those. But you can do that. Then over here, we got a few more things. Store procedures that start with SP underscore. And Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you put in a SP underscore, the first thing it does is go into the master database, check to see if that exists there, then it'll come back to your database.
Yeah, if you're, well, I think as long as you're in the context of the database, I gotta remember, but yeah, there's something about that.
Yeah. So,
USP tends to be better, I
Yeah.
think.
Yep.
yeah.
I usually
That's
use
the-
SP.
Yeah, that seems to be the standard. I always, and the other reason I don't like it, because SP underscore usually implies a system stored procedure.
That's right.
Something that was
Yeah, I
signed
think,
by Microsoft. I mean, Brent Ozar has a really good thing called SP underscore Blitz, which is great, and that's fine.
but
But
he puts it in the master
puts it in the
database.
master database, correct? I never want to see SP underscore in my production system.
Yeah, you're right. So it's gonna do is, without a qualifying schema, it's, if it says SP, it's going to go and look in the master database first.
Mhm.
Any other stored procedure, it's going to check all the schemas first.
Right,
But as soon as you change it to SP, it's going to leave your database context and go and see if it exists in the master database.
which is a small fraction, but it is still unnecessary.
No. If you had qualified it in a different schema within your user database,
Different-
it would immediately go there.
Right,
But this weird kind of naming convention and where we go to look for stuff, like I always tell people, don't go putting your database name in front of the schema,
right.
right? If you're in the context of your database,
Mhm.
because then it's gonna actually leave your database to go and check master first to make sure that that database exists.
Right,
And then it's gonna walk down the chain.
Yep.
But if you just do schema, you will not leave the context of your database. It'll search the schema and go,
and it's small
Right.
processing, but every little bit matters.
Right.
Right, and
depending.
so if you find one, you simply can click the store procedure, and it will tell you the code that it run it, and as you can see, SP underscore,
Mhm.
right? So it has all that information. Then we come back down here, and we have index revenue, which we already talked about. Then it has, so like store procedures created in the last 90 days. So I have a couple of store procedures. This could be an audit thing. So we had to, under SOX, we had to report any store procedures, the date that they were created. But then we also had to go into our change control system and show the change that allowed this to get created. So this could be very important, right? Then just a few more to look at. Stored procedures with recompile, no count. Stored procedures that have deadlock priority set, stored procedures that have select asterisk in them. Those are all things I want to know about. But I also have stored procedure list. And what this does, this just simply lists out all the stored procedures when it was created and modified. Now I click this and it just gives me the code. Right? I can also, there's a similar one for tables, and we're actually almost done. So I have here, there's plan guides, table list, and click here. I can go to a table. So let's say I go to the address table, and it gives me the schema, the description, the one that was created, last modified, but also gives me information about all my columns. It gives me information about any constraints that might be there, as well as the definition of the constraints. Then also I can see if there's any index information on there as well. Right, all in one spot. I can easily get information about my tables. Then down here, I think there's just a few more things we want to look. Table row counts and size. I click this. This can tell me where all my size and my database is going to. So it gives me an index name, the table, the row counts. The reason these are red is because they're heaps. No clustered index,
Yeah, that's,
right?
That's
That is a performance problem, right? So that right there, now it's gonna tell me where my potential problems are.
well, here's the thing. You, in your shop, and anybody else for that matter, do you allow developers to create indexes?
We use a Redgate tool called Flyway.
Yeah.
So they create the code and they push it through Flyway. So indirectly, we do.
Hmm.
Because we really have no control over the flyway process. They can kick that off whenever.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's always been a pet peeve of mine.
Mine too. You know,
I mean, I'm old school. I think that, they want an index, needs to be discussed.
it needs to be reviewed, yeah. I think sometimes DBAs are kind of left out of that process a little more than they should.
Yeah,
But this will tell me row counts and size, how much space each individual table is consuming. But also tell me if there's a heap, but also have a report out here. It says tables that are heaps. It'll give me that information. But also tables created in the last 90 days. User defined data type. I click here, it gives me the data types that I'm currently using and the definition of it. But it also will tell me, if I come down here, it will tell me where they're being used at.
Mhm.
Right? And that's kind of important. I've never been a big fan of user-defined data types because I think it makes our job a little more difficult because when we see that user-defined data type, now I got to go see how it's defined.
Yep.
In reality, this is just simply, in my opinion, just another name of system data types. Just use the system data type.
Hmm.
Right? But it is something that we encounter from time to time. Then here's views. This is the view list. So if I come in here and I want to see the definition of the view, I can click here and there's the definition of the view. Right? So it is something that I don't need to go to Management Studio, right click on objects or anything like that. I can come in here and more importantly, there's no risk of accidentally modifying anything. It's 100% read only. That's part of why I wrote this, because it eliminates the accidental modification or deletion of objects. That is good, right?
Mhm.
And so that's part of why I wrote this. So let's see if there's any other reports. Oh, computed columns right here. Computed columns in the database. It tells me what table, the schema. It also gives me the definition of the computed column. So there is really, in my opinion, not a lot that as a DBA we would need that is not in this set of reports.
I agree with you.
I have probably spent well over 1,000 hours on this.
That,
I started this in 2000. And I just continue to add to it. And I will tell you, whenever there's a performance issue, this was the first thing I pull up
Let's see one.
because it'll tell me where the problems to. Right? So that is my reporting and monitoring solution. You can download it for free. You can also, and there's information how to get a hold of me. But there's also, so if you go, oh, that's not what I wanted. The disclaimer. It is right here. There's my email address, my blog. If you look at this, feel free to contact me. But I know there's some people that are using it. I don't know if there's a lot of people using it. I honestly, I wrote it for me. And I wrote it for my teams.
I'd want to tweak it for MI and SQLDB, and specifically for SQLDB, you'd have to make it so that instead of creating its own database, it
Mhm.
would just provision a new schema within the database to write monitoring information to.
Monitoring for that data.
Because with Azure SQLDB, it's contained, all
Oh,
contained
yeah, yeah,
database.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no
I
cross.
see where you're going with this.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll work
Yeah.
fine, probably almost flawlessly outside of maybe a couple of things that don't exist
Mhm.
in MI. But everything that is there would work.
Yeah.
SQLDB just needs probably a couple of tweaks.
Yeah,
Some of the stuff's just irrelevant in MI,
yeah,
but it'd be cool.
yeah. And if you come here, you notice there's one item that says only works in Azure DB.
Mhm.
I will tell you, most of these will be disabled if you connect to an Azure SQL database.
Yeah.
Because it does try to check but as Microsoft releases versions and especially Azure SQL Database, they update those all the time.
Yeah,
And I will tell you, they did it in the middle of one of my classes, and I had some code that worked great, and then they upgraded and it didn't work anymore.
huh,
And so you guys have both been in SQL Saturdays and stuff. I remember being in Nashville in 2000 was before COVID, or 2020 was before COVID. And I can't remember who the presenter was. I do remember I only had 3 people attending my session because I was going against 5 MVPs.
Uh.
And I'm like, well, nobody's going to come to mind. But I remember one of the presenters walking around and he was sitting, and they found Azure got updated and none of his code was. So he had to rewrite all his code last minute, and that will happen from time to time. They can't-
most of this shouldn't. We're very good these days.
Yeah.
We used to not be as good, much better now at making sure that there's no regressions in
Now,
code.
that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
When that happened.
That's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
Well, we got on the chat here, we got somebody that says he can't find your domain.
DaveBland.com.
Oh, that's your blog? That's,
Okay,
I
DaveBland.com.
think it's Dave Bland,
Yeah.
not David Bland.
Yeah.
DaveBland.com.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
Cool.
figure that out.
So my key is, and this is something I've known Ross and Jared for quite a few years now. I love helping people get better at their jobs. That's why I've done, and I was thinking the other day, I think I've done like 65, 70 SQL Saturdays over the country. And this is the part my wife, even though she's sitting out there, over the last 12 years, I've probably spent about $60,000 of my own money doing this. I absolutely love going to these events because it's fun, but the speaker party is kind of cool too.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
But but I enjoy helping people. And my hope is that the same will help you get better at your job. Now, one of the things I said early on that this is good for training as well. You go through each of these items and say, well, why is this important? Why is this important? What are CDC tables? And that's when we're out at Summit, I don't even know who I was talking to when we're sitting, Ross and I were sitting with these people we met at the conference. And we were sitting at the bar and I was going through this because one guy mentioned he had just hired somebody who had never been a DBA for, and I got it. I got the tool for you. And basically, this kind of outlines a training plan for you.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've noticed as a DBA, especially because I've been training DBAs for 5 years, that is that you can get overwhelmed really fast.
Mhm.
And this can kind of help prioritize and specifically tell you what I gotta learn. Okay, you're not going to learn this all in one day, but I can pick a topic and I can learn about that in
it takes at least 4.
4 days.
I can tell you that. It takes at least 4.
Yeah, sure. I've been doing it for 26 years, still learning.
Yeah.
The science you can learn in 4 days. The art
Yeah,
takes a lifetime.
yeah, it does. I mean, there's a lot of things that a DBA does, a lot of things that a DBA needs to know, but hopefully this kind of outlines
That's awesome.
what the DBA might need to know. Now, you had your hand up. Did you have?
no, I was just asking for your blog, but I found it
Got it.
and I just downloaded your reporting tool. It's so helpful.
Yeah, I hope so.
I just learned like 10% of what you have from my job at CPS back then.
It's
This is the beast. Wow.
Yeah, when I teach DBAs, the first thing I tell them is give yourself time. Right? I tell them, I said, you can become a DBA relatively quickly. You become a good DBA after about 5 years, 5 years. It's not something you're going to get in your first year because there's just simply, you can read all the documentation you want in the world and it won't always prepare you for every real world scenario that's out there. Some things are just, you won't find in documentation. That's part of why I like the blogs of people that are out there because they encounter these situations and they will blog about it. And we were talking about AI before we started. Kendra Little, who's one of the leaders in the SQL community, she's fantastic. She put a blog out there yesterday, day before maybe, and it was about AI and the role of DBAs. And she said, this is good, this is bad. And I thought one of the things she put in the bad part is that for performance. So when you get a block of piece of code, you really not only need to analyze and see if it works, you gotta review it for performance as well, making sure that it's not gonna cause you a problem. AI is very good, but you can't just simply take it and paste it. But again, for here, so if I look at the database settings, so in this case, I'm missing a page verify option for a database. I can come in here, but more importantly, I can see the query. And the directions are there. If you want to copy and paste that code, it'll tell you. You just got to export to Word first, because this will not let you select and copy and paste.
DBA advice number 256. Don't get so good that you forget to look at the error log.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, it's like, I think I got promoted to senior DBA, and I'm like, yeah, I've learned all this stuff. I'm really good at tuning code, and we're doing all this stuff. And like, I'm like, why can't I figure this out? What's going on with my boss? Because he's like, Jared, don't forget the basics.
Yeah.
You check the error log,
Yeah.
and it was right
Yeah.
there, immediately in the error
Yeah.
log. It showed.
So 2 more reports I want to talk about. One is failed logins. Where does this go? It goes to the error log and pulls out this information. Another report I want to show you is this one right here. Is email and job steps. Now what this will do is it'll look for anything only for edu.com, .gov, or .org. Why is that important? Is because you could have jobs out there that is sending data externally of your company, and you may not know about it. Because it could be hidden in a job step somewhere, right? So there's also, I think, another one in here that'll tell you email and store procedures as well. One of the things I'm going to add, I haven't quite added it yet, is there's a table in the MSDB database that can return sent email. Right? So you can then analyze exactly where it's sending email to. I haven't got that in there yet. So, but anyway, I hope you find this helpful.
That's great. This is.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
It was a lot of fun putting it together. I'm always adding to it. Believe me, I did not do this all in one day.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a ridiculous question? I'm trying to install SQL Server 2025
Yeah.
on this computer.
Yeah,
It doesn't let me. It says some kind of this error, but I installed it on 2 different machines. It worked.
I think I had that error, but I'm forgetting how I solved that.
but is there enough space on the disk?
More than enough. 512 gig.
Yeah.
I have 276 gig left.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Yeah, I don't either.
I know it was something I'm trying to remember because it was like last year I had that issue, but I forget what the solution was. But I know there is a solution.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know what that is. So anyway, you guys got my email address. Ross will put this up on their website for your later viewing. But I hope it helps. And if you got questions or if you have additions, send it to me and I'll look into it. Like Jared had one, and Russ, I think you had one too. And I got a few others that I'm working on right now. So there you go. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
That's good.
I'm gonna stop recording.
Yeah. I wish I had more an insightful question because that was because shit, and I only have experience to actually even know what I don't know to add.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's pretty comprehensive. There's
Yeah.
not very many things left on here that I would want to know, but I'm sure something's gonna happen. I'm like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
make a report out of that. And that's usually how I get them now. That, like, for example, that